Gameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our college football game of the week preview between the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Longhorns. Now let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with the Sooners.
Offensively, it's imperative for the Sooners to get off to an early start. The last 2 weeks, this offense hasn't looked in sync right out of the gate. And this week versus Texas, I like the matchup of their offensive line versus the Longhorns' defensive front. Now, defensively, I look for defensive coordinator Mike Stoops to dial up the pressures non-stop versus a Longhorn quarterback situation that has struggled with consistency all season long. Now let's move over to Texas in this ball game, and the Longhorns offense has the firepower to put points up against anyone in the country. They have a talented receiving core with arguably the most talented backfield in the country. Now this week versus Oklahoma, they're going to have to lean on that ground game to make life easier for David Ash or Chase McCoy back there in the pocket. Defensively, the focus this week has to be keeping contained versus Blake Bell, who can do a lot of damage outside of the pocket, and there are many ways they can apply pressure without losing contained. I would find creative ways to use redshirt freshman linebacker Timothy Cole. I think this guy has a chance to be special for the Longhorns defense. The X factor for Oklahoma in this ball game will be their pass rush. Can they disrupt the timing of the Longhorn passing attack? If they can do that, they can make these guys one-dimensional and get them off the field on third down. The X factor for the Longhorns will be that ground game. Like I said before, they have the talent in the backfield to make it happen. You look at Jonathan Gray, Malcolm Brown, Joe Bergeron. All three guys can be starters on any team in the country. Lean on your talented backfield to help you win this ball game versus Oklahoma. Now here are some coaching points for both teams in this ball game. For Oklahoma, you want to move the pocket for Blake Bell. Give him a half a read, a half a field, and that way you can get those run-pass options going to help get him in the groove early. And don't give up the perimeter on defense. They have the backfield to take it to the house. You look at Jonathan Gray, one of the faster backs in the Big 12. And also, you look at your red zone offense. Versus a team like Texas that can strike quickly on offense, you want to maximize your own possessions in the red zone with 7 and not 3. And for Texas in this ball game, you want to go old school. The Texas Longhorns used to be able to get off the bus, line up, and run downhill. Now they still have the interior offensive line to make it happen, and they definitely have the backfield. I would go old school, run downhill versus this Oklahoma defense. And in the passing game, I would help out my quarterbacks by going with condensed sets versus this Oklahoma secondary. You want to get those natural rub routes and pick routes to try to get a big play deep down the field. You have a big play wide receiver in Mike Davis on the flanks. And the big matchup in the secondary will be between cornerback Carrington Bynum and Jalen Saunders, a talented wide receiver for Oklahoma. That's a matchup that Bynum will have to win, or Diggs, whomever's on him. They're going to have to win that battle throughout the course of the ball game. Now here's some 2014 draft prospects you want to keep an eye on in this ballgame. For Oklahoma, you look at their offensive line, one of the best in the Big 12 with Gabe Eicher and Darrell Williams. In the secondary, outstanding cornerback in Aaron Colvin. And I'm a big fan of Blake Bell and what he can do throwing the football. We know about his running exploits. This is a guy that's a very good passer. Big fan of the fullback Trey Millard as well, 6'2", 260. Can also be a running back if he chooses to. And also look at some other players on their roster, Jalen Saunders and also Damian Williams. And for the Longhorns, you look at Mike Davis, one of the more athletic wide receivers in the country, solid hands as well. Mason Walters, a talented guard on the inside, 6'6", 320 pounds. Jackson Jeffcoat is a guy that has good pedigree and can bring pressure off the edge. Has to get better in that aspect, though. When you look in the secondary, you see two outstanding corners, a junior and a senior, in Quandre Diggs and Carrington Bynum, two guys that can really lock down opposing wide receivers. Jamil Holloway is one of the best option quarterbacks of all time. Here's a guy as the only true freshman to lead his team to a national title, and from 1985 to 1988, this is a guy that racked up the Big 8 Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, and finished his career with 5,100 yards total offense and 55 total touchdowns. Tommy Nobis is one of the best linebackers in college football history. Here's a guy from 1963 to 1965, averaged 20 tackles a game for his career, became a two-time All-American, and he started on both sides of the ball, linebacker and guard. And before his career was over, he racked up the Knute Rockne Award, the Outland Trophy, as well as the Maxwell Award. I like the Sooners in this ball game. When you look at both defenses, I think they will show up. They will slow down each other's passing game. So who can run the football? And I think you have to side with the Oklahoma Sooners because they have the one X factor in Blake Bell. When you have a mobile quarterback, it is now 11 on 11, and that puts the defense at a disadvantage. So I like Blake Bell to keep it close with his arm, but win it with his legs versus the Texas Longhorns.